Hey everyone! ChatGPT Taylor aka Taylor here. Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is something that I've thought about for a while, and I feel like now is a reasonable time to talk about it. As everyone probably knows by now, Season 5 of Disventure Camp is slated to be a fans versus favorite season. Now, if you're like me, and you're also a fan of Survivor, then this theme should be extremely familiar to you. And based on this tweet from Jared, it's clear that other themes from Survivor will be considered for future seasons of Disventure Camp. One of these themes that Jared mentions is known as Blood vs. Water. If you don't know what this theme is, then as a brief explanation, Blood vs. Water seasons feature two different groups of campers. Half of the cast consists of returning campers who competed in at least one previous season. Meanwhile, the other half of the cast consists of brand new campers who are considered loved ones to the other half of the cast. One camper could be the child to one of the returnees. One camper could be the parent to one of the returnees. One camper could be the romantic partner of one of the returnees. And there's many other examples that I could use. This adds a bit of a unique twist as the campers would now have to compete against someone who they directly know in real life, which could end up being a large source of drama. And with many of the already existing campers having established families, I think there's a great opportunity for Disventure Camp to employ the Blood vs. Water theme for a future season. This allows them to bring back some notable returning players, while also allowing for some new campers to be introduced to the game, bringing the best of both worlds. So for this video, I will be going through the returning campers and loved ones that I think could be cast for a potential Blood vs. Water season of Disventure Camp. And to specify, I'm going to assume that this hypothetical season would consist of 24 campers, meaning that we would need 12 returning campers. And since we would have 4 generations of campers by this point, I'm going to assume that 3 returning campers from each generation are invited back. And since we don't really know anything about the new campers for Season 5 right now, I'm going to focus on the 9 campers from the first 3 generations that I think would return for this hypothetical season, as well as who their loved ones would be. And with that, let's get started. Before I begin, make sure to like and subscribe if this video is to your liking, and make sure to comment down below if there's anything that you would like to see going forward. Let's kick this off with our Season 1 cast. Now, this cast has had a good amount of development with regards to their family background, so there are several options to choose from. But I'm going to start with the camper that I would really like to see return, and that's Dan. I'm probably sounding like a broken record, but I think there's potential for a good story involving Dan if he were to return for a second season. And since Jared mentioned that he's open to giving underutilized players their long overdue spotlight, I don't think it's impossible for Dan to come back. And he has a loved one that I think would be great to include in the show, which is his sister Franny. Granted, we don't know much about Franny outside of her phone call with Dan in episode 5 of Season 1, but there's definitely room to construct a good story for her and Dan. I've mentioned this in previous videos, but with the perception of Dan in the Disventure Camp community being generally negative, we could easily tie this into Dan's next plot. Perhaps Dan enters the Blood vs. Water season distraught after having to deal with his unpopularity in the fandom. And perhaps this is further compounded by Franny immediately becoming popular among her new teammates, making Dan feel a bit envious of Franny's ability to be liked by others. Perhaps Dan's envy is stifled outside the show because Franny treats him well despite her general likability. But once Dan and Franny are placed on separate teams during the show, and Dan is forced to watch as Franny is immediately respected by her team during challenges, the envy building up inside Dan could cause him to start his own villain arc, fueled by his desire to prove that he deserves respect from others. I just think it's an opportunity that can't be passed up. Why leave Dan as a one-note character when there's a perfect opportunity to build on his character and his life after Season 1? But again, that's just my opinion. The second camper that I think would be a good candidate for a Blood vs. Water season is the fitness influencer herself, Gret. I know that Gret has already made it far in 2 seasons and has had some development in both, but I feel like there's still something to explore with Gret's story that could be best accomplished in a Blood vs. Water season. While Gret has regained her confidence and her relationship with Yule is in the past, the one storyline of hers that's still unresolved is her relationship with the rest of her family. We know that Gret's parents give more attention to Gret's brother than to Gret, thus making Gret jealous of her brother. So hypothetically, if Gret entered the Blood vs. Water season alongside her brother, we could have a storyline that allows us to explore this unresolved plotline. In particular, we'll be able to see how this conflict is viewed from the brother's perspective. We could take the simple route of having the brother being fully aware that their mother likes him more. The brother spends his time bragging to Gret about how he's more liked, and Gret spends her season showing her family that she has managed to carve out her own success without their support, and that the only approval that really matters is her own approval. Alternatively, we could explore a scenario where Gret's brother never fully realized how badly their mother's favoritism affected Gret, and it eventually prompts her brother to make a move that sacrifices his own game or positioning in order to save Gret. The brother would then apologize for not realizing how badly Gret has been hurting from this inequity, and the season ends with the two of them rekindling their bond and the brother promising to make sure that their parents give Gret the attention and praise that she deserves. I just think it's a great opportunity to take an already existing plotline, build on it over the course of the season, and resolve it as a final send-off to one of the series' most beloved campers. Perfect pick for me. As for the final camper from season 1, I was a little hesitant to pick this person, but I feel like it's a pick that has to happen for this season, and that person is Jake. I know that Jake has already had 2 seasons where he's been at the forefront of the main drama, and he even has a spin-off to build on his character. But I doubt that Odd Nation cartoons would disqualify Jake's eligibility for future seasons because of this. After all, we got Tom and Aiden included in season 5, so bringing Jake back for another season is not a stretch. And as for Jake's loved one, I think the obvious bet is Sean, especially since the two of them just reconnected, allowing for the potential to explore how strong their sibling bond would be under the stresses of reality television. Particularly, I think having both Jake and Sean in the same season would allow both of them to get some closure to their storylines. For Jake, one major criticism that I've seen of his story arc at the end of season 3 is that he never really stopped being gullible and letting his emotions get the best of him. So if Jake returns for one more season, his plot could involve other campers trying to turn Jake against Sean, knowing their history and Jake's propensity for being gullible. But in a true showing of change, Jake would not buy into the attempts to manipulate him, and would put his full trust in Sean, showing that Jake has not only changed as a player, but has also fully rebuilt his bond with Sean after a tumultuous few years. As for Sean, because he deeply regrets how he didn't reciprocate Jake's support throughout their life, Sean would originally overcompensate by trying to protect Jake at all costs, even if it's to his own detriment. But eventually Jake would sit Sean down and assure him that he doesn't need to give up his own game in order to earn forgiveness, and that Jake has already forgiven him for the past, so Sean should start forgiving himself. Perhaps Jake could relate this to how Ashley essentially took the hit for him back in season 3, and after seeing how his own actions ruined Ashley's game, Jake wouldn't want the same thing to happen to Sean, allowing Jake and Sean to fully repair their bond as brothers. I get that some people may not like Jake, but if he is going to come back, this story could be the way to make his appearance a bit more digestible for the parts of the community that don't like him, which is all we can really ask for. Now, I did consider some other people from season 1 for this list. We know that Tom and Alec also have established families in the Disventure Camp universe, but since they're already in season 5, I'm not sure if bringing them back for a 4th season would be the best idea. I also considered bringing back Drew and Lil since we don't know anything about their existing family, but since we don't know anything about their families as of now, any talk would just be wild speculation. The only other camper that I was considering from season 1 was Ashley, as she could finally have her own plotline while playing the game. Although, I'm not sure what plotline her loved one would have on the show, whether that be one of her parents or one of her sisters. So that's why I stuck with my original 3 picks: Dan, Brett, and Jake. Moving on, let's look at the season 2 campers. Picking returnees from this cast took a bit more time than I thought it would, but I do have my 3 picks. Let's kick this off with who I think might be the most obvious pick for this season, Rhea. Now, I know that there's a lot of people around the community who are pretty much fed up with Rhea by this point, and would probably not want to see her return to the show. However, what makes her a popular pick is because of the loved one that she would bring with her, that being her sister Isha. Ever since Isha was seen in the final scene of season 3, the community began awaiting the day that Isha would make her debut as a camper. And with the blood versus water theme being an increasingly popular theme in this community, I just think that this would be the perfect opportunity to give the community what they want by bringing in Isha by way of her more villainous sister. And I think they could have a decently intriguing plotline while on the show. We know from season 3 that Rhea doesn't want Isha to be a victim of the harshness of Hollywood and television in general. So, I can imagine a plot where Rhea tries her best to coach Isha on how to play the game, hoping to show her how to play a respectable game while also not letting people take advantage of her. This could show a more caring side of Rhea to the audience, beyond her wishy-washy nature as an antagonist. But from Isha's perspective, we could dive into something a little more nuanced. We know from season 3 that Isha views Rhea very highly. However, it may not stay that way once Isha is fully exposed to the reality of show business. Once Isha arrives on the show, I could see other campers attempting to target her, purely because she's Rhea's sister. And once Isha catches wind of this could cause Isha to become resentful of Rhea, opening her eyes to the reality of what Rhea has done to her reputation on reality television. This could lead to a major confrontation between Rhea and Isha, with Rhea expressing genuine remorse that her actions have hurt her sister's chances of winning, and Isha declaring that she hopes that she never ends up like her older sister. We could even end up with a climactic moment with Isha voting out her own sister. This kind of storyline would be pretty messy and full of drama. Seems perfect for a Disventure Camp season. My second pick from season 2 is one that I hesitated on a lot, but for the sake of drama, that pick is Connor, alongside his wife, Anya. I know that the public's opinion of Connor generally soured after season 3, especially with how he was written after he returned to the game. But with that in mind, having Connor on this season could be an opportunity to redeem his character. And honestly, the best thing that Connor can do in this position is to show Rhea that she literally does not matter to him anymore. He shouldn't ignore her, but any interaction between them should make it clear that Connor has not kept tabs on Rhea's recent accomplishments. For someone as vain as Rhea, the only thing worse than not having Connor fall in love with her is for Connor to not even think about her. That would cause Rhea the most pain. But that doesn't mean that the drama stops there. Now that Anya is in the competition, I can imagine Anya feeling defensive over Connor due to how much Rhea hurt him in the past, and thus, I can see Anya actively trying to target Rhea in the game. Maybe the two of them even become antagonistic with each other, similar to how Linda and Anastasia interacted during Season 4. And with this source of drama taking place, this would allow the writers to keep Rhea and Anya in the game longer than they would normally last. After all, if these two continue fighting, a more strategic player could look at their arguments and think, hey, if I can keep these two here, they will keep targeting each other instead of me. This would then prompt the strategic player to rally votes against a different player in order to keep the target off of their own back. And by keeping Anya and Rhea in the game longer, this provides enough time for Isha to have a change of heart regarding her opinion of her sister, while also providing enough time to establish Anya as her own character beyond being Connor's wife. I can't guarantee that this would be the most exciting way to include Connor and Anya, but I can imagine it occurring for the sake of drama. As for the third and final camper from Season 2, I had to think about it for a while, and ultimately, I decided to bring back James. I know that bringing back another former winner might seem questionable, but personally, I'm interested in seeing what James can do without Aiden by his side. And yeah, I know we saw a bit of that in Season 3, but I think there's potential to show a different side of James if he returns. I could see a plotline where James ends up as the diplomatic leader of a majority alliance. In this role, we'll get to see an actual strategic side of him, as opposed to the dumpster fire that was his strategic game in Season 2, while also seeing him care about his allies and be empathetic towards them, which he gained from being in a relationship with Aiden. I just think that with James generally being perceived as not playing the best game in Season 2, having him show actual signs of being a good player would give a bit more credibility to his status as a winner. But who would be his loved one? Well, since it can't be Aiden, since Aiden has already competed on the show, it would have to be James's younger sister. We don't know much about James's younger sister, but according to the wiki, she's unemployed, so I could imagine James persuading her to join the show as a way to potentially earn some money. What I think would be interesting is if James's sister ends up being the opposite of James. While James is extroverted and loves putting himself out there for the world to see, what if James's sister is more reserved, and her arc throughout the season is about breaking out of her shell and learning to be more open? I could see her trying to hide behind James for a little bit, but once James is voted out for being a threat, it would force her to step up and actively take control of her own fate. She would start building connections on her own, and maybe she even takes James's place as the leader of the main alliance. I just think that would be a nice feel-good story that would contrast with the drama that's brought by Rhea and Anya. Sounds good to me. Now, there were definitely some other duos that I considered. I thought about including Lake and her girlfriend Mariana, Rosa and her sister, and even Ali and her mother. However, since Lake, Rosa, and Ali are in Season 5, I don't think it would be best to immediately bring them back for another season. I also considered bringing Maggie and one of her parents or Yul and his brother Minsuk, since I could imagine a story arc for both pairings. However, I'm not convinced that there's too much support towards bringing back Maggie or Yul, so I let them be. The only other pairing that I considered was Hunter and his father, with their story being that Hunter hopes that he can spend more time with his father now that he's not busy working in Japan, and his father eventually coming to terms with the realization that he hasn't always been there for his son, and pledges to be more available for him. I wouldn't be mad if they were cast, but I'm happy with having Rhea, Connor, and James cast for this hypothetical season, along with their respective loved ones. And now, we have the Season 4 campers. Season 4 actually expanded on a lot of the campers' families, so there's a lot to choose from. But my first pick is pretty clear, and that pick is Linda. From what I've seen, Linda is viewed as one of the best campers to come out of Season 4, and I've seen quite a few people disappointed that she won't be in Season 5. So I think people would be happy to see her return for this season. And playing off the fact that her family was a common talking point during her time on the show, Linda's loved one for the season will be her son Kenneth. I specifically chose Kenneth because in Episode 3, Linda revealed that Kenneth doesn't have any plans for the future, so I feel like that's a trait that we could build on during the season. Here's what I had in mind. As the two enter the season, Linda would try to connect more with Kenneth, but Kenneth would distance himself, preferring to do anything other than talk to his mother. In these efforts, I could see him messing around and building random structures in the forest/jungle. Maybe he gives the excuse that he's seen a bunch of people make YouTube videos about making houses in the jungle, and that he's always wanted to try it out. While he does this, perhaps the host spots him and gets impressed at how he's able to build structures from natural materials. And once Kenneth is voted out, possibly out of desperation to avoid being around Linda, the host offers him a job as staff member for the season, where he'll be responsible for building some of the structures used for the challenges. Kenneth would accept, realizing that this could be what he wants to do for his future. And while Kenneth remains as a staff member for the season, he gets to see Linda's confessionals where she talks about how proud she is of her son, while also remaining emotional over the fact that the two of them can't get any closer, and that all she's ever wanted was to be a good mother and help her son succeed. Seeing these confessionals would make Kenneth start wondering if he's been treating his mother poorly after all. And perhaps once Linda pulls off a big strategic move later in the season, Kenneth will start viewing his mother in a different light, leading to Kenneth apologizing to Linda for not giving her the respect that she deserves, and that he's finally realized that she worked so hard and hasn't been given the appropriate thanks in return. While this wouldn't immediately repair all the damage between them, it at least opens the door for the two of them to reconcile and for Linda to improve her life outside of the game. And for all the Linda fans out there, I think it's safe to say that she deserves a happy ending. For my second pick from Season 4, I'm selecting another fan favorite, and that person is Ted. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people in the community talk about how Ted's potential was wasted by eliminating him early, not having him return in episode 16, and not having him return for Season 5. So, I feel like it's only fair to bring him back in this hypothetical blood versus water season. And if I were writing, Ted's loved one would be his wife Barbara. Apparently, this was revealed in a greeting, and the only thing that we really know about Ted's marriage is that a series of losses from poker almost led to him getting a divorce. While this isn't much to work with, it's definitely something that we can build off of. Based on this information, I'm willing to hazard a guess that Barbara hasn't always approved of Ted's career as a poker player, likely due to the uncertainty surrounding his income. Thus, I'm willing to assume that Barbara doesn't feel good in times of uncertainty and a lack of security. So hypothetically, let's say that Ted and Barbara end up in the minority on their original team. While Ted may be a bit more calm, being used to this uncertainty due to his profession, Barbara would be more panicked. Ted may try to calm Barbara down, causing Barbara to crash out, questioning how Ted could be so calm about being in an uncertain situation. Maybe this is fueled by a situation in Barbara's childhood where her family went through periods of uncertainty. Either way, this difference in mindsets between Ted and Barbara would cause some friction in their marriage and ultimately lead to some drama during the season. Perhaps they end up getting separated during a team swap, and while they're apart, they begin to learn about the upside of why the other person feels comfortable in the opposite situation. Maybe Ted finally settles into a majority alliance and he finally understands why Barbara appreciates security. And maybe Barbara gets roped into making a big move to take out a huge threat, allowing her to see the appeal of doing something risky. This would then lead into Ted and Barbara reuniting at the merge, apologizing for not hearing the other person out, and hopefully making their marriage stronger than it was going into the season. Yeah, a lot more writing would need to be done to fully flesh out this idea, but I think it's a good concept for a character that a lot of people want to see return. As for the final pick from Season 4, there were so many options to choose from, and ultimately, it came down to what I thought would best contribute to the story of season, and that's why my final pick is Richard, alongside his daughter Nicole. At one point, Richard described his daughter and his husband as being chaotic messes, so I would imagine that if either of them were in a season of Disventure Camp, that may lead to some messy antics that could end up being entertaining. But the reason why I chose Nicole over Richard's husband Pablo is because it allows Richard's storyline to potentially intertwine itself with Linda's storyline. One of the more controversial moments in Season 4 was when Richard talked about having a daughter, which prompted Linda to express concern over Nicole's adaptation to having two fathers. Now, this conflict ended in the same episode when Linda apologized for commenting on Richard's family, but I think we could possibly expand on this plot thanks to the inclusion of Nicole in this hypothetical season. Perhaps in this season, Linda will observe how Nicole cares for and respects Richard, prompting Linda to approach Richard and ask him for advice on how she can get her son to do the same to her. This would be a weird, yet inspiring way of bringing this story full circle, as Linda would go from questioning Richard's parenting of a daughter, to actively seeking Richard's parenting advice, allowing for Linda to show a clear action that indicates some change in her mindset over time. This could potentially make Linda even more endearing to the audience, while also introducing a potentially iconic new character in Nicole, assuming that Richard's description of her being a chaotic mess is accurate. Nicole could end up as a wild card that entertains the audience with her eccentricity, or she could end up as a clever strategic player who wows the audience with her strategic play. A perfect addition to a mixed cast of unique campers. So Linda, Ted, Richard, and their loved ones cap off my list of former campers that I'd like to see return for a blood versus water season. Don't get me wrong, I considered other options like Slade and his sister or Marisa and her brother, but since 5 of the 6 pairings that I picked from the first 2 seasons were siblings, I didn't want to oversaturate the cast with those pairings by picking even more siblings. The other pairing that I seriously considered from Season 4 was Amelie and her boyfriend, which I genuinely think would be interesting. However, I wasn't sure what story to give them, so I left them out. But at the end of the day, the possibilities are endless when you're introducing new characters into this show. And when you pair these possibilities with a bunch of returning campers, you can end up with a great mix of interactions that lead to some feel-good stories and some drama. The perfect mix for a show as chaotic and intriguing as Disventure Camp. And that about does it for this video. What did you think of the video? Do you agree with my thoughts? Do you disagree? Who would you like to see compete in a blood versus water season? Either way, please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you like the video, click subscribe if you really like the video, and for some ending words of wisdom. Be careful of who you choose to be in the public eye, because you could end up setting a bad example for the people that you care about the most. Thank you, and farewell.